3, 2, 1.
Alright, we're gonna watch out not to shake the table too much.
Yeah, I shook the table when I did that. I can do another. 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you've got something.
The more of opinion you have to this.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because then I have to sift through like the different claps on the audio waveforms to find out which one's and to time it with the video.
Well, if we're just silent for 2 seconds.
Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to Altacast number 5. Today we've got a bit of a different setup. We're trying to use a better camera, which is like an actual camera. And we're recording audio separately, so we got to do that collapsing stuff. And hopefully now we're not going to get any of the choppy footage that we'd get towards the end of videos.
Yep.
That's the main thing we're trying to fix. And
hopefully we'll have louder audio.
Yeah, I mean, like the Altacast 4 had good audio.
Oh,
3 is the one that had the not so fantastic.
We're getting there. We're improving. Soon we'll have backdrops and green screens.
Yeah, I really wish we had more depth behind us, because then we can actually use what the camera can do with like depth of field and things like that, and it could look nice. But instead we have a crappy.
I'm just adding more depth.
Yeah, and hope to God we're not out of focus right now.
Well, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So, welcome back. We just got back from. It's 2020. Woo! We did it a whole year making the game. So everybody's back to work now. We're kind of starting into new things, and the main thing we want to address is a bit about what 2020 is going to mean for Alta and Township Tale and the development cycle, what updates are going to look like.
Yep.
Because this is one major change to how we're kind of doing updates.
Yep.
And that's the main thing we're going to be covering this podcast.
We're updating every day.
Yep.
Jokes.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't let that one sit too long.
I said yeah instinctively, just to agree. So, usually we talk about what everyone's doing, but right now there's not much of that.
Well, so right now Victor and I are doing a lot of cleaning up of the project. It's the start of the year. It's a good time. We haven't embarked on any big tasks yet, so we're both free to do a lot of cleanup. Timo's been working on improving our build process. As a lot of you know, sometimes things go wrong, so Timo's making things easier, so it's less steps for us, less places we can screw up, but also just fixing up some of the common issues that happen. And Serena and Boramy are making cosmetics.
Yep. Just making them for like we're more or less done for next rotation. Oh, for this rotation that just came out, I guess, at this time of recording. But yeah, so Serena's kind of on that. We've got some prospective interns coming in to see if they can help us along with this process later on.
Yeah.
And that's really just the start of it. Like we're just warming up, and that's kind of why we're not taking on any of the big stuff. But we are very close to, and I'm super excited to get into it.
Well, Tima's working on the website.
Oh yeah, Tima's working on the website.
And Eric's working on some puzzle-ish mechanics. Still early stages though. So.
Yeah, but some of the stuff Eric's doing is
getting
pretty
good. It's getting pretty good.
I'm really pumped for seeing it come in some form in the game and seeing all the stuff he can draft up.
I want to put it in the forest, to be honest.
Yeah.
Generate it in the forest. I'm pretty pumped to see procedurally generated puzzles, even if they're not super complex, just ways that make the general sort of exploration a bit more interesting.
Yeah. And that kind of leads on to the next point is, when the things like forests and some of the big features people want coming out, we're trying to do them this year. And that's kind of what's going to change the update cycles a little bit. So to put it simply, we're still going to update every 2 weeks. You can expect the same kind of events happening, I guess, throughout this year.
The routine is not different whatsoever. Yeah. The routine's exactly the same.
But these updates that are coming out are not all going to be gameplay focused.
And by not all, he means
almost most of them.
Almost most of them. The thing is, to give you a picture of what our team looked like last year, it looked like me working on Forest and everyone else not working on Forest. If we want these big features to come out, then we can't afford for the rest of the team to be working on other bits of gameplay. We kind of need to rally together and actually focus on the big things so that we can push them over the line, and get them out for you guys to play. So what that means is we'll still be updating every 2 weeks. We'll still be doing hot fixes as necessary, but there won't be gameplay. But you can probably expect that there's going to be a couple much larger updates than any of the updates you would have expected last year.
Yep. You'll still see us. So we're still going to do things like balancing, fixing bugs, any kind of quality of life or kind of like user flow things that already exist in the game. We're going to get looked at. So in terms of like if things in the early game are too hard to find resources, you might see us addressing things like that. But it's not going to feature anything that much like you won't see something like the trade decks or like the map boards come out this year. And what that means is that, and that's because we're kind of reshuffling our resources to put more bodies on the bigger features. Primarily me and Joel are both going to be working on forests.
Those bigger features might contain, it's worth clarifying, it's not like the big features aren't going to have little things in them as well. It's just that we're bundling it up as one big thing because that's how we're approaching it, rather than having lots of those small things. And some things may leak into updates. Like if we work on something for the forest and we find a nice way that we can put it in the game already, we might do that. But the point is, it's not going to be our focus to be like, what features are we shipping this update? What features are we shipping this update?
And that pretty much just gives us time to really to work on these bigger things, increase the fidelity a little bit, relieves a bit of the pressure of the update cycles in terms when it comes to creating the gameplay content. In some cases, we felt like we had to hit this 2-week deadline, so things didn't get carried through to the extent that maybe they should have been carried through. And then it's really hard that if we have to jump onto something else after that, it's hard to come back
and fix up those.
And fix up something because we've got this 2-week chunk and we want to assign it to something cool and new rather than work on something old. And so to stop those kind of things from creeping up on us, we're changing to this kind of format.
I guess a good side effect of this will be the fact that the game will probably be a little more unchanging on the super regular basis. So we'll actually be able to look at things like balance and look at things like bugs and hopefully get the game to a stage where it's more stable than it's ever been before, rather than constantly, because when we're constantly pushing out features, as Boramy said, it's hard to slow down and actually readdress previous problems, but also it's hard to actually look at the game and know what the big problems are because people are always focusing on that latest thing. So there's definitely downsides, but it's for the greater good, firstly, but we're hoping to actually take advantage of some of the upsides as well.
I think it's about time we worked on something on like the scale of the forest and properly and try and get it through. Something that will probably dwarf the mines in terms of player experience. Like it'll feel like such a new, exciting thing that's going to be filled with enough content that it's going to be exciting for everyone to go and explore. If we were to roll it out slower in like a different timeline, we'd have the forest generation out. Then you as a player would explore it because it's new, but then you'd understand all of the rules of kind of like how the generation works. And then as we trickle in content, it's less exciting for you to visit the forest. Like it's not.
We kind of want that big one wow moment. Of course, if you're a supporter, you've seen heaps of screenshots. But as we go, we'll continue sharing things, but you won't be experiencing. You won't actually be in there experiencing it until that moment where everything is kind of all at once, very overwhelming. Speaking of dwarfing the mines, once the forest is out, it'll also give us opportunities to do stuff like revisit the mines and actually vamp up that content as well. So
there are a lot of changes that we kind of want to make to the mines, and it's a matter of seeing how we can do it in the best way possible.
It's also worth noting forest isn't the only big feature we plan on shipping this year. It's not like our entire year is forest. We have multiple big features that we have on our roadmap. We're not going to list them all, but the forest is the first one that we're focusing on.
And obviously I don't want to give like an exact time, but I like to think it's ideally the first half of the year.
I like to think so. Hopefully things won't be that slow now that the team is working on it. It's a bit hard for us to gauge because up until this point it has only been me.
Yeah.
But once Boramy is involved and we started working on art, we can actually see what pace we can hit and maintain, and that should give us a better idea of how long it's going to take.
Yeah, we'll definitely have momentum, and because Joel was kind of working on the tech, and now we can move towards the experience crafting of the experience, and what does it mean to be in the forest? What can you do? What's going to stop you?
What are you going to find?
What are you going to find? How can we add things that will, trickle back to the other mechanics? How can it be this really meaningful thing for you to go in there and do stuff? So that's that aspect of things. Is there anything else you want to talk about with 2020?
No, I don't think so. I feel like we've covered it all. If you guys have questions, obviously we'll be dropping an Altacast Q&A in the description, but also we'll be on Discord to chat to clarify what we mean when we say we're not working on gameplay and what we mean when we're saying we're focusing on forest. Because I think some people are going to hear this and be like, yes, they're focusing on the big things, but then some people are going to be like, oh, what? There's not going to be as many content updates. Yeah. So I think it will be a bit controversial, but we're happy to hear your feedback and take that on board. But to us, we feel like every time that we sidetrack on a smaller feature, all it's doing is holding back our greater vision of the game. So we want to focus on the big vision, the big core elements before we move on.
And ideally, those periods between those big updates means that we can really refine the experience that you have so far in the game. Especially, now that for a lot of you who watch the Altacast and who talk to us regularly, you have hundreds of hours on in the Township Tale. But for new people coming in who hit all of these little hiccups and hurdles that exist in the current game, those can be off-putting, and we completely understand that. And we want to take those chances in between the updates between the large updates to address those problems and make sure that for new people and for you who keeps playing the game, that everything gets smoothed out and you...
Just little things like not being sure how to make a backpack or not being sure where they're meant to go to start off with. Those sort of things can really sort of hinder a new player from enjoying the game. So it's not a huge amount of work for us to improve it. It's just a matter of us actually observing and making decisions about how we can fix it. So it won't sidetrack us, but hopefully with this slowed down pace, we'll actually get the opportunity to address that.
Yep.
I think that's...
So that pretty much covers the main basis of what we have to say for now. Sorry if things are a little bit vague. We're really excited about some of the stuff coming this year, and we don't want to get into that any further.
We'll do that in other Outcasts. The thing is, these are all really big topics, so...
Yeah, so they deserve their own kind of stage.
Yeah.
That's 2020. Thanks a lot for everyone for playing the game so far and being with us and being a part of the community. It's been really awesome seeing everything grow last year in 2019.
Yeah.
And now we are re-energized and fueled up for an exciting 2020.
We're coming up to 1 year of supporters, so that's pretty exciting. It's crazy to think that the supporter thing only came out last year. It feels like it's been there since day one of Township Tale, but the reality is the store is only...
The store's
only 6 months old.
6 to 7 months old, yeah.
So, so last year we actually... A lot happened.
Yeah.
A lot happened last year. So this year, twice as much is going to happen. I just shook everything. Okay, sorry for shaking your view, people.
Yeah. Hopefully this year we want to tackle some of the big gameplay stuff is the main kind of thing. And that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna cut real quick and then we're gonna go on to the Q&A.
Yep.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So I'm gonna go do that now. Stop clapping. Don't ruin the thing. Okay. I'm recording again.
3, 2, 1.
Yep. God, I really hope we're not up. So like I have trouble because I can't tell properly on the
I can look
viewfinder.
if you're out of focus.
It's just so small. Like I know we're pretty close.
Yeah, no, I think.
But like, it might be slight blur. I don't know. Okay, Q&A section. All right. First question.
Question 1.
Useful legendary items when?
Forest.
Forest. Okay. There's a question on what useful means.
What legendary means, and what an item is.
Like the general direction that we like to go with for things is to go down the crafting route. Like so, you get legendary materials more so than items.
Yeah.
There will be room for items, but we don't want them to supersede your crafting process.
Yeah.
Like we'll try and have a balance of both. But I think if you're the kind of sorry, I need to reset this. If you're the kind of player who's trying to min-max things, we want the direction for you to go down the crafting route rather than trying to seek out like this one sword.
Yeah, you're not just going to get the legendary of each thing and then be the strongest. Yeah. That being said, to answer the question, probably with the forest we'll start seeing a huge ramp up in materials in the game. Obviously, we added leather recently, and those are the sort of materials which tie into huge amounts of systems.
Yeah.
In the long run. In the short run, just generic crafting. But in the long run, those sorts of materials will tie into huge amounts of features and affect lots of parts of the game. And so we're going to see more things like different types of wood, for instance, is a really basic example of things where some woods might be really rare, and it actually affects the way you start. Like you might visually appear, if you're a shield carrier, you might have a different looking shield. So it's both aesthetic, but also the practice of things, so different handle strengths, stuff like that. So it's not super legendary as such. It's more like the mithril equivalent. And we may have new ores as well, which are like right now mithril is actually way more common than a legendary metal like you would imagine would be. So in the future, I think we'll start seeing resources that you consider to be the legendary or a legendary version of their sort of thing.
On another front, I think when I think of legendary items, I think of items that have like special abilities, kind of like the Phantom Guard type of deal. Yeah. And so I think you'll see legendary-esque features like mechanics like that come from like mixing alchemy with some of these materials and like infusing gemstones and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's also the kind of trinkety items like the watch glass,
the spyglass.
The spyglass, sorry, and we should see more of them throughout this year.
You can make a spyglass now, actually. You can make spyglasses.
You can craft them.
You can craft them.
Okay, cool. But we might see more sort of specific use case items like that.
Yeah. Do I delete them or edit?
Click them, and then mark is done. This question's about multi-bladed weapons. So for those who don't know, there used to be a bug where if a blade had if a handle had multiple blades on it and you hit someone, all the blades at once would deal damage. So you'd be dealing like triple damage to someone. And it basically meant that normal swords were pretty much never useful. Never viable in comparison to someone who has like a triple bladed sword.
So pretty much once I think one of the ways we'll come back to why is it viable for you to have multiple weapons, multiple blades on your weapon, is when there's another detriment to you doing that, a bit like a sort of a trade-off for it, because of the way the weapon figures kind of behave right now. If I've got a long handle with 3 blades at the end, it doesn't behave that differently from just having one.
Yeah, there's no downside to those blades right now, so we don't want to buff it up stupidly.
And so once we have, maybe you need to do, maybe the swing requirements are different, maybe it behaves differently in some other way, then you might see a reintroduction of something like this. Another reason why we kind of removed this is because it wasn't something we controlled, it was kind of like an artifact of the physics system. When this comes back, we'd like to find a way to control why and how this happens.
Even if we don't change it, I think it will be better once we have different enemies that respond to different metal types, for instance, Because if you have a single Valiant blade, say, but there's an enemy that's Valiant's not very effective against, if you do a trident or whatever, and on one side you have Valiant and on the other side you have Silver, which is strong against this creature for whatever reason, you will actually be in a position where you can adjust which part of your weapon you're hitting this creature with based on which things are good against that creature. So you can, having more medals on your weapon actually gives you more control over what type of damage you're dealing. Will the supporter server have magic later on for testing, like how climbing happened? We can't say yes specifically for magic, but we can definitely say that there will be more features coming to the climbing branch. The supporter branch, so that you can experience things in advance of them coming out. Obviously, climbing's still not out, so any new supporters are still getting to see that before.
And you'll see evolutions of climbing as we get close to climbing coming out in the supporter server. Are rings going to be a part of a marriage system? Like, think the ring in TF2, or are they going to be a cosmetic? I'm not sure how they work in TF2.
We have talked about
what does a marriage system mean? Does that mean you have to you can split your taxes on trade decks?
we talked about having, like, for fun, a cosmetic in the store that you pick a friend when you buy it. So it's like a ring, when you buy it, you pick a friend and they get the other ring. So it's like a matching pair of two rings of like a duo pair. And maybe they have to accept it, but once you've accepted it, you're stuck with a ring from that person. You're stuck with them for the rest of your life. Like it says like the ring from blah, and like there's no way to ever like get rid of that ring. Or like you literally, we don't like the idea of being able to trash a cosmetic from your account. That's the downside. Or maybe if you accept a ring from someone else, it replaces the original ring on your account or something. Like it's always just one wedding ring, but I don't know, whatever. Like we could do that.
Could be a nice thing as part of like a gifting mechanic.
But I think rings will be a cosmetic.
Yeah.
Okay. And there will be non-wedding rings, quite likely as well.
Yeah.
It's also worth putting out there.
If we ever have like a marriage type of thing in the game in like the gameplay side of a Township Tale, it's probably not going to be done with a ring. There'll probably be some kind of other ceremony you do to bind yourself to
rings.
Rings
are such a earth thing, not a World of Township Tale thing. If you plan on doing Necromancy, how many summons would you let summoned by each player or controlled at once? Could you develop small armies of your own? Well, we haven't even talked about.
We haven't talked about the number side of things. The controlling aspect is the difficult part. So when I like to think that you have a resource that you're trading for the Necromancy summons. And it's both maybe like a physical resource, like the incantation you're doing on the floor, but as well as like a kind of like an inner energy type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going to be capping you. And that way you could have 3 really strong enemies, or you can choose to have like 15 weaker enemies. And the scale of these numbers, I don't know if that's how many we're going to be able to support, but that's kind of how I.
So Boramy wants there to be 5 necromancers who just crash a server by summoning their
15 skeletons each.
Yeah. Okay. So we haven't talked about it, but I think you will be able to, if and when we have Necromancy, I think you will be able to be controlling your own little small army.
Yeah, like you'll have like a mini party at the very least.
Yeah, party. Party is probably a better word than army. Yeah. Yep. Read it, Boramy. No. Read it out. Read it word for word.
So this is a
word for word.
This is a question asking about Joel's fire hands.
No, read it.
No.
It says,
I will never utter those words.
I want Joel's fire hands.
Okay, thank you for your opinion.
Yes. Okay, let's move on. I don't know what this to say. We're not doing any of this stuff right now, so there's not going to be any decisions, and we're going to like we don't tend to make decisions as such. We tend to say like this is what we like or this is what we don't like, and then when it actually comes to making decisions, that's when we make decisions. Because the reality is, like, my opinion might completely change of this as I play other games or talk to people or talk to you guys, or Boramy talks too much. I might like change my opinion, in which case there's not even going to be a debate when it comes to whether we implement this. So everything can change. I like my fire hands idea as well, but let's move on.
Will Necromancy ever be a thing? For those of you that don't know, it's a magic that deals with time, and it's awesome. You're right, it is awesome. We thought a bit about how to do Necromancy, because obviously it's a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
And pretty much the answer to that is kind of like it's like localized to areas, and won't actually affect everything that deals with
it can't really affect other players.
Yeah, I mean, like we could kind of like do disconnecting things, but
where your body starts moving backwards. But the problem is if like you...
Oh, you mean like time reversal and stuff?
Isn't that what...
I was thinking more slow-mo or like...
Oh, slow-mo? Like yeah.
Slow-mo is something we can do. Time reversal might be a bit, I don't know, expensive to track.
Both of them still end up with like, if I'm moving my arm like this and I'm in a slow-mo field, is my arm going to lag that far behind that when it ends, it just kind of has to snap to catch up or whatever. There's some iffy things. Yeah. It's something we can explore, but it's definitely...
It's going to throw a big wrench in how objects behave in the game. So it's a bit of a unknown thing how it's going to come out.
It's notoriously wacky in multiplayer games. There's actually some really great examples. I think it might not have been Street Fighter, but one of those fighting games that I've never played had a really good Necromancy move in one of them. I don't know. Like, so games have done it. Games have done cool things where you like you deal damage, but then you rack up damage. I don't know. There's just weird things. Maybe, but we'll have to think about it when we get up to it.
How do you feel about? Okay, I remember reading this. How do you feel about mobs and bosses that learn? For regular mobs or their descendants, this can mean they're aggressive or skittish if mistreated, or friendly, helpful if treated well. For bosses, this can mean adapting to the types of attacks players use so they become less effective, requiring players to mix up their strategies. Even better would be having a memory of individual players.
I think most mobs probably won't have specific things towards players, but maybe some of our more intelligent mobs will have sort of memories of players. We've prototyped a system which has a concept of memory, has a concept of knowledge. So one entity can learn that Boramy is a bad person and should be killed on sight, but that doesn't mean that every enemy knows that. But if they were to share that knowledge with another one, then they would know it too. And theoretically, the AIs could modify their behavior based on knowledge. It's not at all hooked up into the game whatsoever. So it's not something we're using yet, but it's the sort of thing we could explore. And even if it doesn't, it might prove not to work well, is the other thing. These are the sort of mechanics that you see in some games where they try and make them super emergent and the whole game breaks because of it, because one player does something super unexpected and then a whole army of enemies decide to like slay themselves because that they think that that's the best solution. So there's a little bit of like carefulness where we have to where we draw the line with how emergent and like we don't want it so that you can walk up to a boss and poke it with a flint and it suddenly is like, oh, they're a flint attacker, let me start doing this other attack, and then you can kill it in 2 hits because it's changed its behavior to combat flint. Like we have to be a little careful with this, but we would like to explore it.
Yeah. That pretty much answers all the things I would have said about it.
Pets? Question mark.
Pets? Probably, I feel like we touched on pets a little bit, but yeah, we would like pets, and that kind of goes into the animal grooming thing. Is kind of how that's gonna go. So not necessarily like a meta pet that is always with you, kind of like how the palette goes in Monster Hunter or things like that. Yeah, we'd want it to be an actual in-game, like in-world pet that you've found yourself or that you've raised yourself from
You've trapped and
enslaved,
bewitched it to think you're a okay human being.
Do you plan on expanding on digging anytime soon? I was thinking there could be treasure maps that lead to hidden digging spots, bringing stuff. Yes, we'd love to expand on digging. I was considering earlier if we could dig up treasure chests, but they're our treasure chests are not really that physical.
Yeah.
So it's not super easy.
These are the sort of things which kind of use an existing mechanic, but kind of a whole new mechanic as well. These things might slip into these sort of things. If any features are coming, other sort of features that would be released this year.
Yeah.
Especially if it ties into that sort of, as we talked about last Altacast, that was it last? Yeah, that quest sort of. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. If it ties into like that quest or incentives to go and explore sort of thing, then it's more likely to make it this year. So something like a treasure chest definitely falls in line with our sort of vision for 2020.
Yep. Treasure maps as well sort of fit in that. Yep. Is climbing going to be used to access main parts of the game, change up to the way you get into the mountain pass and an actual climbing part? Yes. Climbing is going to be a pretty, like, we'll see how well people can handle the climbing once it's out, and that'll determine how mandatory it is for you to get to places.
I think
there might be like if it's not mandatory, what I'm saying is that there'll be other ways for you to reach this area. Like maybe it involves contraption or approaching it from a different point.
I think we'll have difficulty tiers as well. Tiers. Like.
Yeah.
If something is super mandatory and it's meant to be easy to get there, then we won't make it so it's like a crazy hard climbing course. But there might be bits, just like dungeons where it's super hard to kill all the enemies. There might be like alcoves that are really hard to reach without being really good at climbing.
Would you add herbalism to the game? It would add a new reason to adventure to different zones.
Yes.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, herbalism, I think,
is kind of like an alchemy-ish.
I attribute herbalism to alchemy.
Herbalism to me is like a blend between alchemy and like healing salves and stuff. But that's kind of like alchemy is like a dark wizard thing, and like herbalism is like the good wizard or the druid sort of.
It's kind of like the local doctors.
I think we'll probably see plants tie into all sorts of mechanics in the future, whether you want to call them alchemy or whether you want to call it something else. Like the lines are so blurry.
I mean, I guess, yeah, like.
Do you have to heat it up and stir it 3 times clockwise? No, but are you still kind of crushing things and then like using it like you would any other alchemy thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll probably see herbalism come down in some respect. Can we cut
down trees,
trees.
grabbing the big logs. It's something that we wanted to do at the very start, but it's also quite a
there's some. I feel like if we prototype something, we come up to a decision on how that could go, because we haven't tried it. We've kind of like theoretically sort of wrapped it in our minds in terms of like how it could work.
And one of the first things Boramy did was take a tree from the glade all the way into the town, like a full-length tree.
That was rough.
with a shovel, not a shovel,
with like a large axe.
Yeah.
Getting past like the stilts on the bridge between the woodcutting and that was like a fun mini game. We like to the variable length is kind of the difficult thing, and how one person can carry it.
It could be that you can move individual logs, maybe if that has a use, or maybe you can't really carry them, but you can kind of just nudge them and
kind of like influence them.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done. Is magic going to be accessible right from the beginning, or will you have to progress through the game in order to access it? Probably the latter is how it is in my mind.
Yeah, it's going to be the latter. Like, how much progress is not going to be like super mid to or late game. Probably a bit in between where you start to get your hands on it. But we want some of the really exciting parts of it to be part of the end game thing. Because it's not like, if you're a magician, we want it to be
you're
a magician because you tried your hardest to be a magician.
But other people might be able to dabble in, like you might, if you want to be a magician from the get-go, then maybe you can get there at a fairly accelerated rate. But if you're just a blacksmith and you want to dabble in magic on the side, then maybe you can do small sort of I don't know, cantrips, is that what D&D calls them, fairly quickly, but not like nothing like shooting the world's largest fireball within like a day.
Yeah.
Okay, how are we making step sounds while moving around when we don't have feet?
Would you look at that? We're out of time as well. Well,
it's actually there's this virus which is on the skin of legless creatures, and pretty much what it does is it senses distance, and it goes whenever it thinks it's moved around half a meter, and that's why while you're moving around you hear these kind of footstep sounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all honesty, we put step sounds for kind of immersive reasons, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, may it change? Maybe.
But we like kind of being able to hear your steps.
In the long run, we actually want sort of stealth to be something that we really can play around with, and stuff like the sounds you make while you move around will tie into that, not just for PvP but for PvE as well.
Yeah.
Procedurally generated dungeons in the overworld instead of just the caves. I'm talking about dungeons such as crypts, catacombs, and such.
It's not like caves.
So we will have dungeons that are connected to the caves. We will also have procedural dungeon-like experiences in the overworld as well. Dungeons are going to be pretty much... I think they're going to be a really huge part of the game once they're in.
Yeah, they're going to be
you get your party together.
You get your party. It's kind of going to be your end game, like your...
It's raiding.
It's your goal. Like it's the reason why you did all the other stuff you've done so far, is to go to this dungeon, fight enemies, solve puzzles, kill bosses. Collect loot and special gear and...
special gear.
Yeah. So yes, dungeons are definitely on the road.
Are we changing ore spawning? We will probably change ore spawning this year. It's a bit hard to tell when. It's a bit hard to tell how at this stage. We have some ideas. The reason this person's asking is presumably because they're on a public server where there's never any ores. Ores don't respawn super fast. They're kind of tailored towards a server of 16 or so people, whereas there's obviously hundreds of people on the public servers.
Yeah.
So we'll try and see if there's ways for us to make it so it kind of accommodates to the server population a bit better. And that may include quite drastic changes to kind of distributions as well. Like I think in general things like mithril will probably go down as we work out ways to make it so that mithril is something more to strive for rather than something you just go to layer 100 and mine thousands of.
Yep.
Last question is talking about server lag. Server lag is always something we're going to be focusing on. It's not, there's nothing we can do. Like we're constantly doing evaluations of ways we can improve it, but it's not something that we can fix all at once. This person actually says, I have no problems on private servers. So I've got a quick solution for anyone who wants to have a less laggy experience. Go to a private server. Host your own, find a friends, join the purge, do whatever you want.
Another thing is the official public servers for Township Tale are not capped. I mean, none of them are capped, but we're not capping servers. But generally, the game is not designed to necessarily have 30 to 50 people on a server.
Yeah.
If we were to strip things down to like the 16 players that we've talked about a lot, then we can I know the experience has been optimized at that level. It still has a long way to go. And one of the first steps one of the next steps we're hoping to take with that is updating our engine, because that gets us some access to potentially changing up how physics are kind of done.
Yeah.
Because essentially looking to swap from physics to Havoc engine for anyone who knows what that means, we're kind of.
If it's possible.
Yeah, if it's possible.
We still need to do a lot more research.
And we have to talk to people about it.
We're also, just today, for instance, we made tweaks to the way loot spawns. We'll probably be evaluating mechanics which tend to cause lag as well, rather than just trying to optimize the game. But stuff like loot tends to cause lag because people, if they don't want that loot, they chuck it out of the crate and leave it on the floor. So we'll be looking at stuff like that and seeing if there's ways that we can do just easy, small changes that will actually reduce the overall lag.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep, that's it. We're almost out of time. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. That was Altacast number 5, where we talk about 2020 and answer your questions.
Read the description if you have more questions.
Yeah, if you have more questions, we'll have a new link in the description. Since we're back, we didn't update last week. We're updating 1 week from now, and that'll have kind of like how we mentioned. It's going to be a bit of a smaller thing.
Yeah.
As I transition into Joel's Forest stuff and start working on that
Cool.
piece.
That's it.
Yep.
Thanks for watching. Have a great existence. Goodbye.
Yep.
Cool.
Actually, one thing I forgot to mention
is
we're starting up the. You can leave that on.
Are you recording?
I'm still recording.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna be YouTube videos are starting up again soon, so you have that to look forward to.
You didn't do a clap sync.
I didn't stop recording.
Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to see what you would say.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. I see how it is.
Now we're out for real.
Okay, bye. All global meta tags go pages.
Okay, let's hope that all of that recorded and saved.